All right, so as promised, I want to shoot one of these videos. And the question that I have came up with is, what if somebody asks you, how do you know God's real? Yeah, okay, so for most of us, that's probably not that much of an issue, even if we believe it within our heart. Maybe explaining it to somebody else is something we've never had to do. And so, how would you do that? If I wasn't using scripture and I was just speaking, because some people might not actually want you to turn to the Bible. That's just gonna lead to more questions, and that's great. That's fine. We'll go into scripture, but I believe like some people would turn away because they want to know, how do you know, and they want you to say it from within yourself. How can you logically think that there's a God? And to that, I want to answer in that way. What happens to me personally. So I was agnostic before, and this was only about 4 or 5 years ago, actually. I was agnostic for the majority of my life. Actually, I would say probably my whole life, because even as a kid, I didn't really believe. I didn't believe in God myself. I didn't know. I just was going to churches, whatever, as my mom brought me places before. But there's people, even kids nowadays, who are in church who don't believe in God. They know what the scripture says and they can recite whole books, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they know in their heart, or have or thought about that question themselves. So for me, how do I know God's real? Going from agnostic, I know that I was in a pit of despair and hopelessness. I was greatly depressed because of the way the world is. I had a lack of personal love in my life, and I had a lot of abuse from bullying and other things, and that left me to wonder, how can I be somebody who's actually trying to make friends and be loving and honest and truthful? We know these things are. You tell me how good of a relationship you're going to have with somebody if everything they say is a lie and they steal from you. And also, you see what I'm saying? There's morals hold things together, it seems like. Like you have to be able to trust somebody, even in the animal kingdom. Like having a group of animals together, they kind of pretty much trust that the one next to them is not going to eat their cubs or their child or whatever. Like there's a certain like system that's working here, and I'm not mean like that we're anything like animals, but I just mean there is a design amongst all creatures on this planet. And that's one of them, I would say, is that there's a system of, you got to have trust and certain morals within the system in order for it to work. And we all desire that, because nobody truly wants to be alone. And if they do, it's only because they were hurt so bad in their younger years, that I believe anyway, that would cause them to want to be alone. They just want to get away from people because they've been hurt so many times. I would think that's why I was like that, and I'm still somewhat like that. I still hold on to some. I very much enjoy people, but I like smaller groups of people who I'm really close with than the larger groups of people who you just kind of socialize with. So anyway, yeah. So I was agnostic, and I want love, and I can't understand how everybody is not loving, and people who you trust break your trust, and how we're not honest and I don't know, just those types of things, just being there for each other, being loving. Love. How do you love? Like, what is love, and why do I desire it so? And all around the world, there seems to be this same exact thing, and it's just, this world just seems broken, and it's hard to find. At least when I was growing up in my life, the love that I thought that the world should be like. Like, how can I can't have a friend and then trust them fully, because they break that trust. There's not a true love between two people. It doesn't have to be in love, but just the love for each other to not harm or not hurt each other. And the way this world system works, it doesn't seem to be doing very good at that. Now, I'm going to throw in that the reason why I chose the Bible over anything is because when you try to understand, like, how might a loving system, like where everybody works together, what would that look like? How would we create laws or a system that would work perfectly and everybody would live in harmony? The peace that everybody wants, the peace signs and all that kind of stuff, and everything, like, how would we get world peace? How can you truly get it? Is it somebody in control? Is it a a bunch of laws and regulations and rules, but it doesn't really affect the heart. Like you may follow, not break the law. I guess you may not break law, but regardless of the law, internally, you still want to disobey it. Okay, so how can we get to the point where the whole world would work? And you start looking at what Scripture says, the wisdom in here, if you followed the rules. Now, everybody likes the rules because we love sin. Our bodies, I guess, cling to sin. It's really hard to get away from it because we like pleasure and stuff like that. We think it brings joy. It's only temporary joy. But you, even as an agnostic, I understood that. Scripture, from in the Bible specifically, the entire system not only gives you hope for the afterlife, which, by the way, every culture all around the world, whether they believe in Buddha or whatever, everybody thinks of there's something spiritual. So I wouldn't even say evolution itself couldn't even answer that question, that there's hope in an afterlife. That's by design. That's God's design upon our life. And so we seek God. People have shut it down and talked themselves out of believing it. But I think that the internal desire to worship and know God is there. We just fill it with other things. I could say that. But the system at which the Bible works at, the system which God create and wants us to live by, that system it makes sense to me, even as an agnostic, in which why I know the Bible is true. I know that God's real because as I read this book, they say this book actually says it's a living book, living and breathing. Okay. Everything internally that I was just like distraught about, it made sense. Not just like that I felt good about it, not that it just fit with my alignment, but that even things that I didn't agree with when I thought about it logically, if that system was to play out, if I said, okay, maybe I don't like this thing or whatever, but what if the world worked like that? What if everybody agreed upon that? How would the system in the world work under that type of law, under that type of every single person not only loving God as their number one, but loving their neighbor like themselves, and not lying, not cheating, not filthy mouth. I mean, but like the system would be perfect. I mean, there's no other system like it. There's nothing that could compare. And it just makes logical sense, in my opinion. And I think that a lot of people, if they just got past themselves and looked at it and tried to say, what if we thought about not how I feel about it, but what if we thought about what would it look like if everybody did follow this book, and what would the world look like? And I think you would see that there would be world peace, not only world peace, but it would be prosperous, like severely prosperous. Everybody would be living amazing lives and happy and having great marriages with their spouse. And there would be no worrying about other people hurting you if we're all able to live under that system. Now, of course, it's hard to live under that system. And the reason why Christianity is really hard for people to accept is because when you're in that system, you're actually at a disadvantage, it seems like, like from the world's perspective. Why would I let somebody out in front of me? Why would I hold a door open for anybody? I'm hindered at that. Why would I express my emotions and my feelings to other people or love them or help them? Because I lose. You see, and so the logical way that the world works would be like, it's all for me, pride and personal gain, greed, all these kind of things, which the Bible tries to help you eliminate. But we're not all perfect at it, okay? And I would say nobody's perfect at it. Actually, Jesus Christ was perfect at it. But there's no beneficial gain from a worldly standpoint in that. It's all spiritual gain. I'm actually, how can I be happier when I sacrifice more? That doesn't make any sense to the world's humanistic type of logic. If I'm working really hard for my money, and then I use that money to give to a cause that I don't even know if they're really using that money right, how does that benefit me at all? It doesn't. From a physical standpoint, spiritually, I'm the happiest I've ever been. Following God and understanding my purpose gives me a purpose in life. God told me what my purpose here on earth is, and God gives me hope for the afterlife, because everybody, despite what you say, has thought about it at some point. What happens when I die? And even if you do believe that there's nothing after the afterlife, that's a sad. There's no hope. There's no hope in your, live and do what all you want to do right now, and then you're going to die, and there's nothing's going to happen. Well, why hold on to morals? Why seek love? Why have relationships? Why do you want people to care about you? Because if that's the case, just do whatever you want to do, and then go to the afterlife. And I think that's why a lot of people end up shooting up schools and all kinds of stuff, because they have that kind of worldview. I don't see Christians doing that kind of stuff. At least they shouldn't be, if they truly believe. Maybe they're deceived in some kind of way, You get what I'm saying? So I would say from a logical standpoint that reading scripture, that it doesn't matter what other lifestyle you live. Because you might say, oh, what about Buddha? And then, you live peacefully and all this kind of stuff. And then there's an afterlife where you turn into a butterfly or something. I don't know Buddha. I don't know Buddhism's religion. Okay, so I'm just kind of guessing. That's just things I've heard. Or whatever other religion you want to say. But this is true to me, because there is no way that all the people who wrote this book, these are all different books that collectively complete to one, that over such a large gap of time between them wrote a cohesive single story all the way through. And even if it wasn't true, even if you want to say that, even if it wasn't true, I will believe it because I want to believe it. Like, I want this to be true. I know it's true because you can't, if you've been open up to it, if you've read scripture yourself and actually considered what it says, you will know that it's true. You have to know it's true. And it's hard to turn away from it when you know it. I mean, it's just incredible, really. It's just amazing. And it's what I want too, it just makes the most sense. It has so much wisdom, things that can't be explained, and things that were written in there that before people knew about it became true. Like they talked about things about science that they figure out later on down the line. And this was written way before anybody figured that out. So how could they know that kind of stuff? But there's a lot, but it's just, from my personal experience, if I was to answer that question, how do I know God's real? Because one, I want him to be real. It seems logical that he's real. And I love that he's real. I don't know, faith. You can always go back on faith, but how can the world be the way it is, as perfect as it is? How could it have evolved? I don't see any monkeys worshiping idols. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where I'm going, man. That's what I got. Take it what you want. If you got any questions, ask me and we'll have a conversation. All right. Later.